I'm going to call this meeting to order. We have a long agenda tonight, so please bear with us. Ms. Nestor Jelen, would you please call the roll?
Sure. John Enright Randolph.
Here.
Dee Owens. Julie Thomas.
Here.
Amy Thompson. Bernie Garitas.
Here.
Jim Stainbrook.
Present.
Jerry Pittsford. Jeff McKim.
Here.
Margaret Clemens.
Here.
Okay, so we have 5 members in person and 1 virtual. We have a quorum.
Thank you. And would you kindly introduce the evidence?
Sure, I'd like to introduce the following items into the evidence. The Monroe County zoning ordinance as adopted and amended, the Monroe County comprehensive plan as adopted and amended, the Monroe County subdivision control ordinance as adopted and amended, the Monroe County Plan Commission rules of procedure as adopted and amended, and the cases that were legally advertised and scheduled for a hearing on tonight's agenda.
Move we accept the evidence as introduced.
Second.
I'll go ahead and call the roll. Julie Thomas.
Yes.
Bernie Garitas.
Yes.
Jim Stainbrook.
Yes.
And just a reminder, Jim, we'll have to have you be seen visually when you do vote for tonight's meeting.
Oh, my.
Jeff McKim,
Yes.
Margaret Clemens,
Yes.
Tron Enright Randolph.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes.
There have been 2 changes. I've been notified to tonight's agenda. Under new business, item 6 has been continued and item 7 has been withdrawn. With that in mind, is there a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
I'll go ahead and call the roll. Bernie Garitas,
Yes.
Jim Stainbrook,
Yes.
Jeff McKim,
Yes.
Margaret Clemens,
Yes.
Tron Enright Randolph,
Yes.
Julie Thomas.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Now, we've stacked up quite a few minutes that need approval from prior meetings, and I wondered if people had had a chance to look them over, and if there's any discussion or a motion to approve them all or individually. Yes, Mr. Enright Randolph?
Yes, thank you. I was at all the meetings. I'm not sure if we should do them separately or not, but I do just want to state that on the roll call on October, November, and December, all the members are duplicated. So you have me attending twice at the same meeting. And so same with some other of my colleagues up here. So that's the only thing I caught.
Okay. I think with that mentioned, Tron, we'll go ahead and fix that, and you could still approve the minutes. We'll make that fix.
I'm fine. I looked at it and I think there out of all 4 of those, there was only 2 times one member was absent. So I'll go ahead and make a motion to approve them all.
Second.
Okay, there's been a motion and a second to approve the minutes from September 7th, October 19th, November 16th, and December 14th, 2021. I'll call the roll. Jim Stainbrook,
Yes.
Jeff McKim,
Yes.
Margaret Clemens,
Yes.
Tron Enright Randolph,
Yes.
Julie Thomas,
Yes.
Bernie Garitas.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, and we have no administrative business tonight, but we do have the first item of unfinished business, which is ZOA-21-11, amendment to the Monroe County zoning ordinance. Page 5, it's on page 5, sorry, chapter 801 definitions, and this is the final hearing. And Ms. Nestor Jelen, would you kindly review this with us? And
Sure. So this is an amendment to chapter 801 definitions, and the changes include definition changes to change in use, site plan, plot plan, structure, comma, commercial, and structure, comma, residential, and structure, comma, residential accessory. So the first change is change in use definition, and the 2 changes that we have, main changes that we have under this definition is that we are wanting to clarify that when the number of bedrooms change, based on what it is under the property report card, which is on the Elevate GIS software, as well as updated by the assessor's auditor's office. We want to make sure that we can have a baseline for the number of bedrooms that people have currently. And then when they are doing some sort of remodel or changing the use of a building, we can clarify how many bedrooms they have versus what's on the property report card. And then the other change is that we would like to get rid of the table that is under section F, which is trying to clarify the classes of uses. If one class changes to another class, it was supposed to not qualify as a change in use. Some of these uses are outdated and not referencing the current use table. So we'd like to just change it to say a change in use is when it changes from one use in the use table to another use. The second change is the plot plan definition. So we're adding several definitions of what I'll discuss in the next part. This is in relation to the upcoming changes to the proposed chapter 815. So the plot plan is going to be a scale drawing that may be certified by an architect, engineer, or surveyor that shows an area where improvements and structures are being proposed, as well as any infrastructure to scale. And then it says specific certification and component requirements will be under chapter 815. So if this text amendment is approved tonight or recommended a favorable recommendation to the county commissioners, this will tie into another text amendment that is going to the county commissioners on April 27th. So something to keep in mind, but it would be nice to have some of these definitions in here, even if the other text amendment does not follow through. So page 42 has a definition for a site plan, and that is also referencing chapter 815, and it is a scale drawing. And we're asking that that be certified by an architect, engineer, or surveyor that shows full property boundaries, proposed and existing structures, and open space. And then the last two that we have are commercial structures, which we put them as structure, comma, commercial, so that they would be all next to each other. And that's structures that are identified as non-residential use as categorized in chapter 815. These structures require additional lot improvements as part of this ordinance and must follow certification and component requirements under chapter 815 prior to issuance of an improvement location permit. And then we have structure, comma, residential, similar, but just that's classified as residential under chapter 815. And then structure, comma, residential accessory, which is then also identified under chapter 815. So I can take any questions that you may have. This is a final hearing of this text amendment, but if the Plan Commission would feel more comfortable in seeing whether the text amendment to chapter 815 will go through on April 27th, we can also review this at the next regular hearing in May.
Are there members of the Plan Commission who have questions for the director? Or yes, Mr. Garitas?
Jackie, on the plot plan and site plan under certification, and then it says and component requirements under chapter 815. Do both of those require essentially a grading plan under those requirements?
Do both of those require a grading plan under a plot plan? The plot plan under chapter 815, the proposed amendment does include spot elevations or contours, but not necessarily a full grading plan.
So spot elevations are proposed or spot elevations existing?
Spot elevations are proposed.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Okay, any other questions for the director? Mr. Enright Randolph?
Mine's more of a comment.
Yes.
We just convened our surveyor review board earlier today, and I commend TSD with their expertise with hosting these virtual meetings, because I attempted to host mine myself. And since I did that, there was a nice delay with technical hiccups. And when I was just kind of listening to some discussion amongst all these professional surveyors, they talked about how much work has just expanded, how much more they're inundated, and they're scheduling things out and quite far. I really think it's really necessary for us to understand if that first text amendment is adopted, and then this definition is adopted, that we pay attention to see if this slows down anyone's desire to do something with their property. We can't have this negatively impacting our community where, you know, we can't get professionals come in here to do the work necessary for them to, you know, do certain things on their property. So I just wanted to share that communication and make that comment.
And I have a comment as well on page 11 of our packet, or page 7 of chapter 801, you know, the elimination of the classes of use. It seems to me as though those classes of use, class A, class B, class C, D, E, F, and G and H, that they also coincide with changes in intensity of use. So, so are we eliminating review for changes in use?
No, what this was trying to accommodate was that if someone was in class H, let's say they were furniture manufacturing and they were moving to grain mills manufacturing, which is not a use currently in the ordinance, they wouldn't have to do a new site plan. So it was trying to categorize certain use changes as not needing to be qualified as a change of use. What we're saying is that as soon as you move from one definition of use to another definition of use, that's a change in use.
And so then it must be reviewed. So
Yeah.
if somebody is, for instance, has a florist and they want to go to machinery, tool and die.
Yes,
Yes, okay. And so
They would need it.
eliminating these levels has no effect on the review or the proposed change of use.
I think it actually clarifies that it'll be easier to communicate change of uses, one use to another use in the table. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And I want to check with our colleagues who are on Zoom on the Plan Commission. Do you have questions for staff? Mr. Stainbrook?
No, thank you.
Okay, thank you. And that being said, we should open it up to the floor and see if members of the public who are here in person in the Nat Hill room have any statements about these changes to the zoning ordinance. I see none. Are there members who are members of the public who are attending by Zoom who would like to comment on these changes? If so, please raise your hand if you're on Zoom, or press *9 if you're calling in by telephone to be recognized. I don't see anybody, so we bring it back to the committee, and the only decision to be made is whether or not it goes directly to the commissioners for a review and approval, or if we want a second hearing.
Isn't this already the final hearing?
No,
This is the final hearing, so if you want to continue it, you could continue it to the next meeting.
okay. So it's up to, it's time for a motion.
I guess I would ask our commissioner representative if there was any thoughts you would like to share, if we maybe want to delay this or move it forward.
I haven't heard any objections today, so I think we're happy to see it on our agenda. Thank you.
Okay, great. I just wanted to make sure that that seemed like a good process to follow. I guess I'll make the motion. Let me get to the agenda. So in case number ZOA-21-11, amendment to the Monroe County zoning ordinance, page 5 of the packet, chapter 801 definitions. This is as the final hearing. I move that we approve amendments as outlined in the packet.
Or forward to the Board of Commissioners with a positive recommendation.
Yeah, to approve as a favorable recommendation to the Board of Commissioners. Thank you.
All right, I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to move a favorable recommendation to chapter 801 definitions under ZOA-21-11. Jeff McKim,
Yes.
Margaret Clemens,
Yes.
Tron Enright Randolph.
I just want to restate for the public quickly that this is more of a definition and that there is already a proposed amendment that might require these certified site plans. So this is just kind of making sure that our definitions are in line with our text amendments if those are adopted. So I'm going to say yes.
Julie Thomas,
Yes.
Bernie Garitas,
No.
Jim Steinbrook,
Yes.
and Jim, if you vote, can you please turn on the camera?
I'm trying to do that, Jackie.
Okay.
Oh, Jackie, it reads unable to start video because the host has stopped it.
Okay. Tech Services, could you assist?
One moment, please.
Thanks.
And I just voted yes.
Yes, thank you, Jim.
Thank you,
Steinbrook.
Mr. Steinbrook.
Okay, so the motion carries 5-1.
Okay, moving on to item number 2 under unfinished business. It's REZ-21-8A. Hinkle rezone from Ag RR to general business. This is the final hearing. Are we hearing this at the same time as the new business or no? Are we separating those out?
Yeah, I was going to present these at the same time since they're so intertwined.
Yes.
However, the rezone to GB is a final hearing at
Yes.
this point. And then the rezone to add the HP overlay is a preliminary hearing. So they can be voted on separately.
Well, just for the sake of efficiency and also clarification, the motion can be made separately at the end, whether the final hearing on the new business item is waived or not.
Mhm.
But it would be more convenient and more succinct if we could present the discussion together.
Yes.
So we are having kind of a hybrid discussion between unfinished business with item number 2, REZ-21-8A, Hinkle rezone from Ag RR to general business, and then the new business, REZ-21-8B, Hinkle rezone to add historic preservation overlay to 1,080 square foot barn. This is the preliminary hearing on that item, and a waiver of final hearing has been requested. And both of these prospects involve 2 8.6 plus or minus acre parcels in Richland Township, section 24 at 4833 West Arlington Road. And Ms. Behrman, if you would lead us through these, I'd be grateful.
Sure. So again, this is located at 4833 West Arlington Road in Richland Township, section 24. Just wanted to note that if the rezone to general business is approved, there is in the works a transfer of the property ownership to Lindemann and Associates Psychological Services to develop office use, and a commercial site plan would be required. The zoning map, this is what we've got here. It's currently Ag RR and also has the rural community zoning overlay over top of it. The petitioner might have been able to utilize that overlay to do exactly what they're wanting to do now. However, one of the requirements is that you have a 2-story building. And from a past petition, it was discovered that the water pressure is interesting in this area, in that when you develop commercially a 2-story a sprinkler system's a little bit of a difficult thing. So we didn't really push for them to pursue that. So they're going with a straight rezone, which is a little simpler, in fact, for staff to administer. And you can see the surrounding zones. There are several commercial GB zones already in the area, and the PUD to the south is North Park. That is vacant at the moment, essentially. This is the site plan of the site. You can kind of see the contour lines and where slopes in red would make that area unbuildable. We have some of the site photos. So these are views along West Arlington Road. This is a home that might be a discussion here in a moment regarding a condition number 3, and a couple of their outbuildings. Some of the barns. The barn that you see in the lower picture there is of concern in that it is was taken into concern with the Historic Preservation Board, and they would like to see the overlay just added to the barn. And so that's what gives this rezone a second part to it. And we'll probably go into more depth of the discussion with that in a minute. And then the top picture you can see to the west is, it used to be called Riley Hospital. Now I believe it's still a Children's Hospital Services. So this is kind of a good fit for the Lindemann and Associates to go in here, since those two offices kind of often work in tandem with treating children. The bottom picture is a old farm pond that's on site. And then we do have some old trees on the site. The upper picture, those are most likely to be slated for removal with the proposed development, but there is another grove that staff found significant and would like to try to have the petitioner maybe design around from having to remove those. We have some aerial views of the site. And then this one is actually facing south. So the green circle designates those grove of trees that I mentioned. You can see the barn kind of to the far south that is of interest. I'm going to pause here for the bells. All right, and then we have, let's see, the house, the HP board has some interest in that as well, and they are interested in having it evaluated for the possibility of being relocated or saved to go to another site. The comprehensive plan has this as Makua mixed use. Spring Point Architect was the applicant for this, and this is the letter that's in the packet of their request for the rezone. This was a second iteration of a site plan that they're just roughly drafting. Again, like if this rezone is approved, then they will in earnest start designing a commercial site plan that would hopefully accommodate any of the other conditions that might be a part of this rezone process. And I will say that they do mention that existing barn, and on their site plan, they already were hoping to preserve that structure on the site. But if the HP overlay is approved, then that would then have some oversight with the Historic Preservation Board, so that any exterior changes to that building would have to be approved by the board, whether that's a window or paint color change or something like that. Again, the site plan. In the packet, there are the use tables for the Ag-RR district, which it currently is. We also included the GB uses. And again, they're interested in using office. This is the comparison of design standards between the Ag and the GB districts. And again, the use determination that was performed did say this would be office. And so the general business use would accommodate this use. The utility capacity letters were submitted for sewer and for water. And again, we do know that water for a second story building might be an issue. The MS4 coordinator didn't have any direct comments with the rezone, but did have some for when a site plan would be submitted. And the highway department also did have some comments, but nothing that would not support a rezone to GB. The plan review committee heard this February 10th, and 5 members didn't necessarily vote. They just had some positive comments regarding that it did agree with the comprehensive plan, but they wanted more input from the Historic Preservation Board. And then this is a little bit of the property report card from the site, just kind of showing that we are looking at some older structures here. The property did not appear in the State Historic and Archaeological Database inventory, nor did it appear in the 1989 interim report. But after the Historic Preservation Board walked the site and reviewed it, they did find interest in protecting the barn and possibly the house. This is the report from the HP board. And they did make that 7 member vote to add 2 conditions. And then I had a petitioner update this morning. They're working towards having the house reviewed in more depth so that it can be determined if it is a structure that is historically worth saving, and or if it is even physically possible to relocate that structure to salvage it. That inspection has not taken place at this time, but I think that all parties involved with this project are interested in at least having that inspection completed. So with that, the Hinkle rezone petition, staff, this is going to be broken up into 2 parts. So staff recommends for the rezone to general business, a favorable recommendation of the rezone to the commissioners based on the findings of fact and subject to the Monroe County Highway and MS4 coordinator reports with the following conditions. Number 1, petitioner to enter into a written agreement to preserve trees west of the large barn as part of the site plan approval process. Number 2, this may be a moot point if the rezone request is approved. And so it is why it is highlighted in blue, but it is the 1,080 square foot barn to be locally designated through the Historic Preservation Board of Review. And then the third one, I talked with legal today briefly, and he may want to weigh in on this one, but the petitioner enter into a written commitment to agree to an inspection of the existing residence for historical significance and potential ability to be relocated prior to any commercial permit issuance. And then the second part of this is a request to rezone to add the HP overlay to the 1,080 square foot barn. And again, staff recommends a favorable recommendation to add the HP overlay to that barn based on the findings of fact. And they are requesting a waiver of final hearing for that second portion of this rezone. Any questions? Yeah.
Mr. McKim, I see your hand is raised.
Thank you. Just wanted to know how onerous is that third condition? I mean, the inspection seems pretty straightforward, but how long do they have to wait to decide if somebody wants to relocate it?
And that gets tricky. So the Historic Preservation Board had made a suggested condition, and I believe that your board reviewed it during an admin session and asked for staff to reword it as best we could to kind of give it a little more enforcement capability, kind of formulating it into this written commitment. But after talking with Dave Schilling this afternoon, I think he had a differing opinion of what we should do with it, and I'll let him speak to that.
I was just concerned that you have a sort of an open-ended condition that it's going to be difficult to say whether it's been met or not, or how long you're going to give the property owners to get this accomplished and what they have to do. What does it mean? I can't read that, the ability to, let me see.
potential ability to be relocated.
Yeah, I'm not sure what that means. So my thought was it just needed to be clarified a bit to state what you actually meant.
So are you looking for a timeline for the inspection, kind of putting the burden back on Legion Restorations? And then a clarification on the last part? Is that what you're looking for? So 2 clarifications, really?
Well, yeah, I mean, I guess this is gonna, if this is approved, it goes forward to the commissioners. What needs to be done before the commissioners consider it? You know, how long, let's say they do the inspection, they find that it's significant and they're under an obligation to work. What does that mean? Do they say, well, we have 2 months to find somebody to take this property and move it somewhere else before we get our permits? It just creates a lot of uncertainty for moving forward, I think.
Mr. Garitas?
Yeah, I'm hung up on it too. Petitioner enter into an agreement to agree to an inspection of the existing residence for historical significance and potential ability to be relocated prior to any commercial permit issuance. So if the Historic Preservation Board says it's significant, are the petitioners responsible for moving the house?
I don't believe so.
Okay. So the petitioner could conceivably under this motion, or pardon me, under this condition, allow the Historic Review Board to come in the day after and look at it, and they wouldn't be bound to anything that the review board says.
Well, it wouldn't necessarily be the HP board. It would actually be a commercial entity
Okay.
or nonprofit.
Okay.
There is one in town that already has some interest in it, but we removed their name from this condition so that it would be open to other parties and not just specifically BRI.
I do remember that.
Yeah.
Okay, so I mean, the petitioner can just continue on based on the way this condition is written, the way I see it.
Yeah, it would.
Commissioner Thomas?
Yeah, I wonder if we could put something like 60 days on this and then because it has to be heard by the commissioners within a certain time frame.
Mhm.
And if we put a 60-day time frame on this, then we'll know before it comes back to the commissioners. We're not holding them up. They can come back sooner, you know, if they get that solved. And they can come back with information on what their plans are. You know, if they can do it in 2 weeks, then they can get on an agenda very quickly, which would be great for them. But I think the burden should be on whoever wants to take this house. And I shouldn't be longer than 60 days, and we can't wait much longer than that either. So it seems like 60 days is the magic number here.
And
I don't know what Mr. Schilling thinks.
for clarification, when you're saying 60 days, that would be from when the commissioners, it would be from the date of when this board
Right,
makes a recommendation.
right.
Okay.
That's just an idea. I don't know what Mr. Schilling thinks about that, if that clarifies things.
I mean,
Okay.
that is what I would have liked to have.
Yeah. Are there, Mr. Stainbrook has his hand raised. Mr. Stainbrook?
Yes, thank you. In the context of Julie's clarification there, are the commissioners able, when they consider this, to add the sort of timeline that we're considering here then at this point? Are they able to add it as it were, or are they not able to do it in that way?
Yeah, the commissioners could edit it, but then they would need to send it back to the plan commission for reconsideration.
Oh, my. Okay. Well, then I would just add, Margaret, a part of which perhaps isn't pertinent as far as helping, but I've been up there at least twice. A little more relevant maybe. On one occasion, I walked the property and not being on the Historic Preservation Commission, my further comment may also be, you might say, worthless, but I didn't see the house as being of any potential historical significance, but maybe that's what this outside group is going to negate. That is my opinion, but I tend to be very protective in my feelings, if not in an opportunity to put those feelings into action. In other words, I must save the building, save the edifice, save the style if it's so. Margaret, trying to come to a conclusion here, I don't see any problem with what Mr. McKim now and Dr. Thomas have added to this. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Stainbrook. I'd like to move to the petitioner and the petitioner's representative to come up and address the Plan Commission. You have a total of 15 minutes combined, and we'd like to hear from you and what your goals are. So if you state your name and sign in, that would be wonderful. I don't think your microphone is on there. Press a green button or.
Press the button on the
Yeah,
right. There you
gotcha.
go.
Yes, thank
Dawn,
you.
sorry,
Thank you.
Dawn Gray with Spring Point Architects.
Oh, great. Well, thank you for coming tonight. So we'd like to hear from you about your ideas for this proposal and just, tell us what you want to do and all of that.
Right. The petition was to request the rezone to general business. Lindemann and Associates Psychological Services would like to develop a office building there for their professional services. They do, as staff had mentioned, work frequently with Riley Children's Clinic next door. So it is a nice position for them and site. The proposed building would be a single-story office building with a partial walkout basement with associated parking. The petitioner or the potential owner is very interested, and before the Historic Preservation Board became involved, wanted to keep the barn and structure. So that is perfectly fine and something that they were intending to do. I think that staff has covered,
Thank you. It's nice to have a petitioner who wants to work with historic preservation and also try to appease all parties. So thank you for your graciousness.
Sure.
Yeah, and I presume that you would also like to speak. Yes, great. Thank you. And if you just would kindly sign in and state your name and affiliation.
Hi, my name is Susan Hinkle and I'm the owner of the property
Oh,
currently.
welcome. How
And
nice.
Nice to see you
Very
all.
nice
and
to see
Hi,
you.
Tammy. And hi, Dawn. I just wanted to, if it is beneficial to round out any information on what's happening. We're very much in favor of Lindemann Associates. I had mentioned in an earlier meeting that I had an older sister that was a Riley patient, and my family has always been very, had a very fond feelings toward Riley. And so the fit that this doctor wants to come in is perfect for us.
Oh, that's nice to hear.
We think that it's a very good use of the land. We've always felt it would go commercial. There's commercial all around us. When they bought the front of our property to widen Arlington Road, they put in a double wide driveway for like commercial. And then they bought the back end corner to widen 46. And there's a stump down at the other end down there. And so not to take up, I know you have a long agenda, but just very much in favor of them with this rezone. And as far as the house and the, I reached out to a mover that they told me about and offered him to come in right away and take a look. And he said, not at this time. He didn't, I don't think he wanted to be committed to anything. He said, it's interesting. Don't know that it's really historic, Moving it, they'd probably have to peel off. We added a wet room on the west end and close the back porch. They'd probably have to take the house apart to move it. So it's not, I think the historic committee originally was hoping it was like a bungalow that was historic. And my family's owned it since 1953, so I know all about it. And I think that I don't know how feasible the move is. And when, so just so you know, willingness, somebody can come in and take a look, whatever you need to do. We certainly don't want to hold anything up, so.
Well, thank you for taking time to come and talk with us about your family's property. Thank you.
Thank you
And that your pleasure with this proposal.
very much.
Thank you. Are there other members of the public who are here who would like to speak with regards to this petition? Either in favor or opposed? And I don't see anyone here present in the Nat Hill room. And so I'd like to turn to the people who are logged in on Zoom. And if you would like to speak about this proposal, please raise your hand or press *9 on the telephone if you'd like to address the Plan Commission about the suitability of this proposal. I don't see anybody. Do you, Jackie? No? Okay, so I'm coming back to members of the Plan Commission for further discussion and or a proposal. Mr. McKim?
Yes, thank you. I guess my question then is that, is condition 3 really even necessary? I mean, it sounds like the petitioner is already openly and publicly discussing with the sole provider of these services any potential interest. And I guess I'm not sure that this needs to be codified in a condition that would further delay the petition. Do others feel differently?
I do feel differently. I would like it to be resolved before it comes before the Board of Commissioners, one way or the other, so we know what the story is. But I don't, I don't want to delay them either. So if they, I don't know how to do that, but trying to play both sides here. If it's a usable house, then it should be moved at whoever's expense, not the property owner's expense, but we also can't wait around forever. So put a finite time limit on it maybe and have it resolved before it comes to the Board of Commissioners.
I mean, what about, given that the clock has kind of already started, or that at least that they've already started to reach out, what about 30 days rather than 60? I mean, I want something that will make it past the Board of Commissioners. We'll get them a chance to move through this process. It sounds like everybody's otherwise in favor.
Sorry. I would have one more question for Ms. Hinkle, the owner, if possible.
Yes.
Yeah, that'd be great. Just to clarify, we're just talking over here. Did you say that Bloomington Restorations, Inc. did come to the property and did not want to do a report?
No, I reached out to them and I didn't know if we were allowed to say the name, but I reached out to them because that was the name that came up from the historic committee that would be a good point of contact. So I called and spoke live with the person there and invited him to come take a look. And he said, don't need to do that just yet, send me pictures. So he told me exactly what to take photographs of. I sent him the pictures. He said it looks like a nice house, maybe be interesting to look at. Never got the impression that he wants to be bound to anything, because if he said there were a lot of variables to consider. One, to take it apart, the power lines with the intersections, and he thought probably going toward Ellettsville would be a good path for it, and there would be a lot of logistics involved, and there would also need to be a place to take it to. And so he said that he didn't really feel the need to come in and do an inspection in terms of that yet, until he kind of, I guess, was going to do some more research. I also let him know that I'm not in a position to speak for the buyer because my sale of contract, that's part of the purchase. And so I have put him in touch with them. And that's where we sort of left off. And he has an open invitation from me to come anytime and take a look.
Okay. That helps.
Yeah. Mr. McKim and then Mr. Enright Randolph, or Mr. Enright Randolph.
I guess usually since we're looking at both of these cases at one, whenever we look at the historic overlay, we usually have a pretty good presentation put together by the historic committee, HP. So is anyone here from the Historic Preservation Committee? So it's kind of, I don't know. Why aren't we hearing from them if this is a recommendation? I mean, I do think this puts on quite a bit of a burden on the property owner to sort out. I'm a little reluctant, definitely to support the rezone request due to the fact that there's no one speaking to us about the historic significance of this barn. So I'm not inclined to favor the rezone request. And I don't think putting onerous conditions on petitions is a great course of action to take either, but I'm in full support of the timeline that was kind of discussed by Mr. McKim, because it seems like they've already actively been involved and we should allow them to move forward. So yeah, one is if we're looking at a historic overlay request rezone, we should hear from the historic prevention or historic, trust me, I'll get it right. The Historic Preservation Committee. I'd love just to hear from them a bit more, because this is a big request coming from
But
that
they
body.
did include in the report. You know,
I mean, come to speak to at the podium, kind of allow us to have some follow up. And I'm just saying, it's a lot.
Oh, okay, thank you, Mr. Enright Randolph. And then I believe Mr. McKim wanted to speak, then Mr. Stainbrook, and then Mr. Garatas.
Well, I guess I would just disagree with my colleague, Mr. Enright Randolph, on the need for them to present in person. I mean, they've participated in multiple meetings. We have a written report here. We have that report incorporated into staff's recommendations, I guess, and then it's a fairly detailed report. I guess I didn't think that was a requirement that they come and present individually or specifically to us in person. It seems to me like their responsibilities have been met.
Thank you, Mr. McKim. Mr. Stainbrook?
Madam Chair, may I ask Jeff a question about where we're going just now?
Certainly, Mr. Stainbrook.
Jeff, if you would formulate your thought on the 30 days, if Tron would like to second that, or I'd be glad to second the motion if Jeff, you're desirous of so moving.
But Mr. Garatas had a comment, and then also Ms. Hinkle indicated that she would also like to provide a little more clarification. So Mr. Garatas, Ms. Hinkle, would you kindly come to the podium and provide a rebuttal for some of the discussion?
So if it provides any clarity, the Historic Preservation Committee had walked the property and typed up an estimation, like their speculation. And so I attended that next meeting so that we could talk in depth about what those buildings really were. One, they originally thought was maybe a one-room schoolhouse, and it's just a storage building that my family actually moved there. It's not original to the property. It was moved there after 1953. And as we talked through all of they were correct about the chicken shed. But the house turned out not to be a historic bungalow. The barn we've just used for storage. And so we had an active clarification at the end of that meeting. They felt that really the only thing they wanted to weigh in on was they liked the barn. And I would clarify, my understanding was no one ever necessarily said it was historic. They liked it. And so, and the purchasers and the architect and I have all said, sure, we'll consent to the overlay to keep the barn. But the Historic Committee has rung in. We've talked about this. We've clarified what their questions were. They were answered and they were happy to just ask for the barn. And could we look into the house being moved just because, you know, why tear down a house if you don't have to? And then they sort of stepped back and said they were good with that. So if that's helpful.
Thank you very much. Mr. Garatas?
Ms. Gray, I have or maybe Katie, either one, I have just a quick question, I think, if I can, maybe more of a technical question. So the way I see how all this is unfolding, you've got a schematic of a site plan. And regardless if Bloomington Restorations wants the home, the site plan pretty much stays what you physically have marked on the ground or marked out on that plan. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So the timeline on moving the house really doesn't put the petitioner, an owner's, a hard obligation on the petitioner, because, you know, they presented what they want to do. And it just is going to cause Bloomington Restorations to get some rocket fuel in their boosters and get moving on it.
Or someone else.
Or
Anyone,
someone else,
right? I
yeah,
mean, it could be
whoever.
anyone who wants it, yeah.
So I don't think it's a great condition, but it's one that probably doesn't mean a whole lot as far as causing a problem with the petitioner. If I'm looking at the site plan, and it is just a schematic, you've got a future building at the southwest corner, and then you've got your parking lot. And I'm looking at the elevation difference, I think on the photo, it shows a pretty big drop. Is the retention of those trees and creating some sort of pathway or walk going to cause this design constraint for you folks whenever you get to the site plan stage? Do you know that yet?
We don't really know that for certain. The future building is just very schematically shown, and it could be configured in a way to allow drainage and the trees. So it's something that we consider, but it's not something that we have fully investigated.
Okay. I just didn't know what that burden was going to be with the building and the trees, because, you know, when you start putting a walkway, putting a building nearby, you've got a tree right next to it, a large tree next to it. I could see that being cumbersome for an effective design and even use of the property, especially when you got the detention pond right there. It just seems that there may be a lot of conflicting requirements on you that may be difficult to meet. And, you know, the 1,080 square foot barn is a nice amenity as a building, but I'm not seeing that anybody's too whipped up over it as far as being some significant structure.
Right. I think it is the desire of the purchaser to maintain that barn. We just haven't dug into enough
Okay.
detail to know any complexity that might surround that.
And those trees aren't a problem for you, or are
The
they?
trees are, could potentially be more of an issue.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Okay. Hi, Katie. Thank you for coming today. If you would just kindly state your name and sign in.
Yes, Katie Stein with Smith Design Group, and it's hard to hear a few of you
Yeah.
back here, just so you know. So Bernie, I didn't quite catch all the questions that you had asked. I will say we have not dug deep into the grading of this site, but yes, to your point, it drops off significantly. The area that we have designated for that detention pond, I mean, it's the lowest spot on that site. That's just where we have it designated now. Obviously, I mean, since day one, when we got retained from Spring Point Architects, it was always the intent to keep this barn. Whenever we do, whether it's phase 1, phase 2, they really wanted to keep the barn. So our design will have to implement making sure that we stay away from that. Obviously, this is very wooded area. So there will be some tree removal I would absolutely anticipate for that detention pond. And yeah, those trees that are circled there, the canopy of those trees will potentially be in that phase 2 building. But like what Dawn says, that's just, it's a block that, you know, if this site continues well and does everything, and we do get into phase two, that's sort of the spot where they have potential for the building. Again, we haven't gone into design to that extent. We've really been focused on just the phase one, but I don't know if that clarifies a lot of any of your questions or
I'm
concerns.
just concerned at the condition of the trees, especially because the barn is kind of out by itself. You know, I think it's a great idea. You could use it for yard equipment. You could use it for maintenance tools and things that may go along with the building, but the trees seem to me that it may be an owner's requirement to preserve the trees, especially on a parcel that's full of trees.
Well, that was sort of my take on it too. This is, I believe, if I stand corrected, 2 8-acre parcels. And there is a lot of unbuildable land on this. And they are really trying to maximize and utilize this corner, which is really the buildable lot on this. And the rest of it is a lot of mature trees, and it could potentially impede into phase two if they stick with that building footprint that we have. But I also don't want to speak for the petitioner or the potential buyer, that if they're okay saving that trees and they want to redesign it and they're okay with it, then that's fine. But yeah, my first instinct when I looked at that is we can't put this building right there, because if we're in the canopy, we're in the roots. So, I mean, it's going to cause damage to those trees, building a building there. Yeah.
Mr. Steinbrook's hand is raised. Thank you, Katie.
Thank you. I'm just going to finish.
Mr. Steinbrook. Jim? I think you're still muted, Mr. Steinbrook.
I'm so sorry about that. As I listened to the design person there, architect, listened to Bernie, and again, having been out there at the risk of over saying that, but looking at the trees, and I also don't want to get just as a preface, although I've already talked too long, I don't want to get in trouble with the Historic Preservation Board. Spiritually, I'm one of them. I don't want to get in trouble with anybody, but I'm one of them spiritually. And still, Margaret, having been out there, I don't see a historic preservation involved there. And at the risk of, again, being too personal about this, we've got some trees here that probably, you know, if you're going to look at trees as being historically significant, that would perhaps meet that criteria. So what am I finally trying to say? I'm like Bernie, without his expertise, that I see some concern there for the design and construction. And I don't think the trees should be in the way of that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Steinbrook. Mr. McKim?
I just want to clarify. I don't think that the tree preservation condition isn't coming from the Board of Historical. Historic Preservation Board of Review.
Correct. That was staff and site visit performed.
Okay. I mean, so, you know, my inclination would be to just, and I can certainly make that motion, but I kind of want to get a consensus here, because it seems like we're on the verge of one, to include condition 2 and then include condition 3 worded something like petitioner enter into a written commitment to agree to an inspection of the existing residence for historical significance and allow potential restorer 30 days from the passage of this recommendation to agree to relocate the structure. Would that put the jet fuel in the, as Bernie put it?
Commissioner Thomas, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I don't want us to minimize what the Historic Preservation Board has done in their report, because that barn is, in their estimate, at least 100 years old. So I'm grateful that the petitioner and the purchaser are interested in preserving it. So I think that's a moot point all around, right? I mean, I just don't want to argue that anymore. I would like to see the trees preserved. I think it's not a huge swath of them, and clearly that's going to make a big difference in terms of the property itself. So I'm not going to be supporting anything that removes condition 1. Thank you.
Okay, back to the members of the Plan Commission, if you would consider making a proposal. And I just would like to state how lovely it is to have people so cooperative and collaborative over the historic preservation and the goals for the property and the link to the family that's been there for a long time. So, so coming back to the board.
May I just ask a question of procedure? Should we still have separate motions on each of these petitions? Okay. I move in the case of REZ-21-8A, the rezone request from Ag RR to general business, that we forward a favorable recommendation to the Board of Commissioners with the first 2 conditions, as I'll just read them. Condition 1, petitioner to enter into a written commitment to preserve trees west of the large barn as part of the site plan approval process. 2, the 1080 square feet barn to be locally designated for the Historic Preservation Board of Review. And 3rd, petitioner enter into a written commitment to agree to an inspection of the existing residence for historical significance and allow potential restorer 30 days from the passage of this recommendation to agree to relocate the structure.
A second.
Okay, will you please call the roll? Thank you.
And Jeff, I might need your help with the 3rd one. I got most of it, but I'll go ahead and try. So this first motion is to send a favorable recommendation in regards to REZ-21-8A, which is the Hinkle rezone from Ag RR to GB, which includes 2 8.6 acre parcels. The conditions written in the staff report and amended as follows. Number 1, petitioner to enter into a written commitment to preserve trees west of the large barn as part of the site plan approval process. 2, the 1,080 square foot barn is to be locally designated through the Historic Preservation Board of Review. And 3, the petitioner enter into a written commitment to agree to allow potential restoration of the existing residence within 30 days of the Plan Commission vote and prior to the County Commissioner vote.
That wasn't exactly what I said, but yours is better, so.
Did you mention relocate instead of restore?
Yeah, sorry, relocate.
Okay.
What is the word?
Okay. Okay, and just to clarify, this would be a report to state whether the potential relocation is feasible, and that would be presented to the commissioners, not the actual relocation.
Right, but not if it's feasible, if they're willing to do it.
If they're willing.
That was
Okay.
the gist of it. I mean, they could say it's feasible, but
Right.
we don't want to do it.
Somebody.
Yeah, somebody could do it. No, I don't want to get them
Okay.
stuck in that.
Yeah.
I'll go ahead and call the roll. Margaret Clements,
Yes.
Tron Enright Randolph,
Yes.
Julie Thomas,
Yes.
Bernie Garitas,
Yes.
Jim Steinbrook,
Yes.
Jeff McKim.
Yes.
Okay, the motion passes 6-0.
And then we have the second item.
In the matter of REZ-21-8B, rezone request to add historic preservation overlay to 1,080 square foot barn. I move we recommend forward a favorable recommendation to the Board of Commissioners.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to send a favorable recommendation for the Hinkle rezone to add the HP overlay to the 1,080 square foot barn. And Jeff, does this include a waiver of the final hearing?
Oh, sorry, yes, and waiver of final
With the
hearing.
waiver of final hearing. I'll go ahead and call the roll. Tron Enright Randolph,
I just quickly want to clarify that I do appreciate the Historic Preservation Review Board. Finally said it correctly. Just in my time, usually they put on really nice presentations when they're asking for overlays, and I don't think it's that needed for them to be here. It's helpful. I think it's helpful for the public. Also, it's helpful if we have additional questions and we can kind of have those addressed during the meeting. But I just want to make sure it's clear that I appreciate their work and their effort. And with that, I still feel like, it'd be nice to look at the entire site versus just one part, but it seems like everyone's in agreement to that, and the developer and current owner. So I'm in favor and I'll vote yes.
Yes, okay. Julie Thomas,
Yes.
Bernie Garitas,
No.
Jim Stainbrook,
Yes,
Jeff McKim,
Yes.
Margaret Clements.
Yes,
Okay, motion passes 5-1.
thank you. And thank you for coming tonight. Thank you. Have a good evening. We're moving on to the second item under new business, or the second item under new business. And this is a rezone -21-9, a rice rezone from RE1 to Ag RR. This is the preliminary hearing, and a waiver of final hearing has been requested concerning 125.54 plus or minus parcel located in section 17 of Bloomington Township at 1725 West Lancaster Drive. And so Ms. Crecelius, if you would be so kind as to go over this case with us.
Thank you.
Madam President, and I'm sorry for the interruption and somewhat embarrassed, but if I leave to use the restroom, do we still have an active quorum? Because I need to take a quick 2
Okay,
minute.
do you want to move that we take a 3-minute?
Could I move to
recess?
take it could be a 2-minute recess.
Okay.
Could I move
Okay.
for a
You
two?
could just, you
Yeah.
could just declare a
Okay,
recess.
we're just having a recess. Okay, we'll be right back. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, Ron.
Been one-
Okay. Director, and thank you for indulging our little break. And we go back to the REZ-21-9, the rice rezone. And Ms. Crecelius, if you'd be so kind as to lead us through this.
Yes, absolutely. So this is one lot of record that's 24.54 acres in Bloomington Township. This is the preliminary hearing of this rezone petition, and they have requested a waiver of final hearing. So the property is currently zoned Estate Residential 1, a former AFA zone. So a quick summary, they are requesting to rezone from RE1 to a Chapter 802 zone, Agricultural Rural Reserve, or AG-RR. The 24 acres, the majority of that property is located within FEMA floodplain and contains slopes that are greater than 15%. The property gains access from West Lancaster Drive. It's currently developed with a single-family residential home. So West Lancaster Drive is a platted local road within the Lancaster Park First Edition subdivision, which was platted in 1958. So if this rezone request is approved, the petitioner is interested in constructing a second dwelling on the property. The petition site had explored potential subdivisions, but because of the large area of FEMA floodplain and the access from the dead end of a public right-of-way, any proposed subdivision would require a cul-de-sac be constructed, which would severely limit the potential area for a second dwelling and a second lot. So a subdivision was ruled out in this scenario. So the only way for the petitioner to seek a second dwelling, which if approved, that second dwelling would be permitted and reviewed as a detached accessory dwelling unit, would be through this rezone process to a zone that permits the DADU use. So this is a pictometry photo of the site. As you can see, there is a creek running through it, so that's the majority of the floodplain. Here we can see those slopes and the FEMA floodplain. Currently, where they're looking to potentially build that detached accessory dwelling unit is just south of their current existing home. Here are a couple of site photos. Upon visiting the site, staff saw that there is a dry stone wall on the property. We are unsure whether it is exactly on the property boundary or if it is contained within, if it's actually located on the petition site. Because of this wall, the Monroe County Historic Preservation Board did discuss this site on February 21st, and they did vote to recommend that we add a condition to obtain a boundary survey to identify whether the wall is located on the property, and if so, to allow the Historic Preservation Society access for future research and or preservation. So the comprehensive plan does identify this area as being within the Monroe County urbanizing area. It is identified as being within the rural transition designation. The rural transition area is, let's see, it does state to offer the opportunity of transitioning the scale and intensity of development along the urban and rural transect, and that residential uses are low in density, primarily single family, and typically are located along existing rural roadways rather than subdivisions, and that larger scale agricultural uses are often within this area. I have included the petitioner's letter, which takes place in the form of a slideshow here on the next few slides. I will have them here in case the petitioner wants to speak and reference his letter. They have provided a few notes on that they were originally within the annexation area and are no longer the current most recent annexation area. They are no longer being within that zone of annexation, that they discuss the limited buildable area and their intent to build a detached accessory dwelling unit. So Staff is recommending a positive recommendation based on the findings of fact and subject to the Monroe County Highway Department and MS4 coordinator reports with the following condition, which is to obtain a boundary survey to identify if the dry stone wall location is located on the petition site, and if so, allow the Monroe County Historic Preservation Society access for research and or preservation.
Thank you, Ms. Crecelius. Do members of the Plan Commission have questions for staff? Yes, Mr. McKim?
I'm sorry, can you just go back to the existing zoning map that shows this as compared to what else is in the area?
It is on the top right.
Okay, which is blocked by the Zoom. Okay, thank you. I got it.
Yes, Commissioner Thomas?
I have a question about the condition. I'm not sure that it achieves what you want it to achieve. And I think it's great to have the board, Historic Preservation Board Review, look at the site. But I think it's important to have something in this that like won't contest a historic overlay for the fencing or something like that, because just saying you can access it doesn't change anything, right? I'm not sure that it is historic, honestly, but I don't know, just looking at it, I'm not sure, but I'm not sure that access does anything, right? So are we trying to ensure that they won't object to an overlay on this part of their property, which would just be the fence, or are we just trying to get the board there to look at it?
I think that part of the condition was that they were unsure if the dry stone wall was on the property. So the main point of the condition is to obtain a boundary survey, which they wouldn't otherwise get another boundary survey to show that. I think they've already gotten one, but it didn't show the wall. But if we wanted to add any other specificity to this condition to add information, we could do that.
Well, this moves a bit beyond what we're here for, so I won't belabor the point. I think if we have these petitions, that it should not be at the expense of the homeowner. But my point here is that I would ask that they not object to an overlay if indeed the wall is historical, and the overlay would only be on the wall itself. So maybe making that clear. I don't know what my colleagues think, but I just think right now, yeah, it'd be great to have a boundary survey, but what does that get you, right? I mean, it's I'm just curious about what the goal is.
Do we have a map that shows kind of the wall? Or an aerial where we can kind of?
There is an aerial image. Here, the picture on the right, the yellow line just kind of illustrates at least the length that we see. It does look like the wall starts to break off farther to the south.
So that's the entirety of the wall right there in the yellow line.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
That's the entirety of the wall right there on the yellow line. The whole
Aerial
property.
imagery, it looks like the wall continues, but it is physically broken down in a lot of places farther to the south. So this looks like the most continuous stretch that we can see.
Great, thank you.
And I would note it would not prevent them building anything if this wall itself became was part of an overlay, a historic preservation overlay. Right? Because you don't have to do the whole property, you can do a portion of the property, correct?
You're asking if they could just put an overlay on the wall itself and not the whole property?
Right.
Yes, they could do
Right.
that.
So this would not obstruct them in any way from building the barn and the accessory dwelling unit if this were potentially part of some sort of historic overlay.
Correct. If it
Okay.
is on the property and they chose to
Right.
add the HB
Okay.
overlay, it would not.
Thank you.
This. Thank you.
Mr. Garitas and then Mr. Stainbrook.
Okay, so I agree with Julie. That was a good pickup. It is a rezone petition, so there's a little skin in it. My question is why wouldn't we just put a condition that the wall shall be preserved instead of encumbering an overlay zone on a wall on a piece of property? Just a
Well, if the-
question for my
If the wall
colleagues.
doesn't have historical significance, then they could tear it down with abandon.
It also may be under partial ownership by the petitioner
Yes,
or not at all in some places.
yes. Okay, Mr. Stainbrook.
Well, I'm about to be overruled, or I think I may have been in sort of by an illustrious trio there. I think these walls throughout Monroe County are extremely historic in that they represent the craftsmanship of masons that no longer exist. And well, that's enough, maybe too much I've said. I hope not. But as I drive around the county off and on, I think this just characterizes our 19th century history. Well, that's enough. But I just feel so strongly that they are historic representations of a time past that may continue in other forms or in other ways. But those masons, those guys and women perhaps are gone. Too much, Margaret. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stainbrook.
Just to clarify, Mr. Shows, the petitioner would only be able to preserve that part of the wall that's on their property.
Right.
So that my point was, I don't know if it's historic or not. I can't argue with Jim at all. They're cool walls throughout the county. There's probably something, a story behind them. But I think we're getting to a point now with these overlays that we're putting them on every square inch of properties for whatever feature we happen to see. And sometimes just saying we're going to preserve the walls on that. And frankly, it's what we used to do. And I haven't seen a lot of walls getting torn down.
Mhm. Okay. Mr. McKim, you look like,
No, I mean, I'm just trying to formulate what the motion would be, but I'd like to hear from the.
yes. Well,
petitioner.
so if we'll wait for the bells to finish. We have a few more chimes. Okay, so if the petitioner or the petitioner's representative is here and they would like to address the plan commission, please come to the podium and you'd have 15 minutes. Or if you're on Zoom, please raise your hand and indicate that you'd like to speak to the plan commission. Or press *9 on your phone if you're calling in. Is Mr. Rice here? Or his representative? No?
We do not see Mr. Rice on the Zoom call.
Okay. Well, are there members of the public here in person in the Nat Hill room who would like to speak regarding this petition, either in favor or opposed? Okay, thank you. Are there members of the public who are on Zoom who would like to speak in favor or against this petition? If so, please raise your virtual hand on Zoom or press *9 on your cell phone or your phone to indicate that you'd like to be recognized. And I don't see anybody, so we come back to members of the Plan Commission for further discussion and or a motion. Yes, Mr. McKim?
I guess I would just like to try out the language that I'm trying to think. I'm trying to address Commissioner Thomas's concern here. And I don't know whether this is appropriate, but I would potentially just take what's in here, obtain a boundary survey to identify the dry stone wall location, and if located on the petition site, allow the Monroe County Historic Preservation Board of Review access for research and or preservation. And if the, and not to remonstrate against any recommendation for a historic overlay made by the Monroe County Historic Preservation Board of Review or something like that.
I just don't like waivers of
Well,
remonstration.
yeah, I know. I believe me, I almost didn't use that word. I hear you.
Yeah, something.
Would
like
not,
that.
yeah, would not oppose. That
Yeah,
sort of
I
thing
would-
we hear.
I would just say would consent to the application of a historic zone.
If requested
Yeah.
by the.
Yeah. Yes, Mr. Caritas.
Well, I hate to put the burden of an entire boundary survey on this property. They've done a site plan. So I would suggest that maybe we use the terminology in as-built of the wall relative to the adjacent property line.
Does that address the need? Does that,
Satisfy the planning department?
Yeah, your point is to just not have to do the full boundary, just the side with the wall on it.
Well, yeah, it's difficult to do a boundary survey on one lot, okay? But to qualify that as a boundary survey, you've got a land surveyor who's qualified, he's done a site plan on it. So we just need to see the relative position of that wall to that property line.
Satisfy the requirements.
Okay, Mr. McKim?
Okay, let's give it a shot here.
Okay, thank you.
In the matter of REZ-21-9, rezone request from RE1 to Ag RR, I move that we forward a favorable recommendation of the Board of Commissioners with the following, or subject to Monroe County Highway Department MS4 coordinator reports with the following condition: obtain an as-built of the wall relative to the property line to identify. I'm sorry, let's try this again. Obtain an as-built to identify the dry stone wall location relative to the property line, and if located on the petition site, allow the Monroe County Historic Preservation Board of Review access for research and or preservation, and to, did you say support or
Consent.
consent to a historic preservation overlay if recommended by the Monroe County Historic Preservation Board of Review,
Is there a
and
second?
waiver of final hearing.
there you go, second.
Okay,
And would just one clarification for the overlay, would it be limited to the fence itself or? Okay.
Yes, sorry, that was the intent.
Agreed.
yes. Okay. Thank you,
All
Jackie.
right. I will repeat that motion. So REZ-21-9, there's been a motion and a second to move with a favorable recommendation to the county commissioners along with a waiver of final hearing with the following condition: that the petitioner obtain an as-built to identify the location of the dry stone wall relative to the property line, and to and if located on the petition site, consent to an historic preservation overlay of the dry stone wall if recommended by the Historic Preservation Board of Review.
Yes, no, I had specified access. Is that something
Access.
that needs to be part of it, that they grant access to the?
Yeah, I can add in
Yeah,
that
I
they
didn't want
also
them to be
grant
denied
access. Yeah,
Okay.
I will call the roll. John Enright Randolph,
I got kind of fascinated about the wall, so I started looking into it, and it looks like it runs along a section line pretty well. I have two monument records that reference a wall, so that's interesting. Just for anyone that like surveyor jargon, it follows our public land surveying system quite nicely. So I vote yes.
Julie Thomas,
Yes.
Bernie Garitas,
No.
Jim Steinberg,
Yes.
Jeff McKim,
Yes.
Margaret Clemens.
Yes.
Okay, the petition passes with a 5-1 vote.
Okay, thank you. We have 4 more cases this evening. The next one is REZ 21-10, and that's the Sturworth rezone from ER to SR. Preliminary hearing, waiver of final hearing requested concerning 5.62 plus or minus parcel located in section 27 of Perry Township at 1785 East Railtown Road. And this is Ms. Behrman. So guide us through this.
As you said, this is at 1785 East Railtown Road, technically. It's a 5.62 acre parcel owned by the Sturworth family. And that is demonstrated in purple, a purple square. And then we have a red square, which is 1901 East Luke's Court, which is a 1.12 acre parcel, and that is owned by the Williams family. And the strip of land that is actually what we're discussing this evening is a 50 by 243 foot strip of land that is technically on the Sturworth property, but the Williams property would like to obtain that for several reasons, and the Sturworths would like to get rid of it for several reasons, and I will go into those here momentarily. But you do see that we have different zoned lots. One is estate residential, and the other is suburban residential. And so we're trying to rezone to that orange suburban residential for that blue square like strip of land. These are some, areas overview of what the area looks like. The Railtown Road access to the Sturworth property is through an easement. And then the Williams property has a direct access to Luke's Court. This is a picture from 1901 Luke's Court, which is the Williams property. They obtained an easement several years ago to put a septic system on the strip of land. I think the health department deemed that this was just the most reasonable place for it to go. And the property owners at the time had agreed upon this 50-foot easement for the purpose of this. We have a new landowner that's in play now. The Sturworths had purchased the property and had a different thought as to the easement. As you can see, there's a fence there. The Sturworths don't even have access to their own property at that point. And then I'm going to bring up the other point, which is that picture on the bottom there is a pole barn that was permitted by the planning department. However, Mr. Williams did not follow his site plan. And so he built over the property line within the easement. And that also then made the structure non-conforming with the setbacks for the estate residential or ER zoning. And then we found out further that he, without a permit, has been adding this lean-to onto the pole barn. So we've got several issues here with compliance. And after talking with staff, it's this rezone with a lot line shift that we're working through to bring him into compliance, make both parties satisfied with the outcome. The upper picture here is that pole barn again. I will demonstrate with an as-built survey that it is more than 10 feet off of that fenced property line, well, fenced easement line at this moment. And then the bottom picture is the pole barn kind of to the left, and then the Sturworth's house is behind it. It's that white structure. So the privacy fence probably does serve a purpose there too. These are some aerial views. I've circled in red that strip of land that we're discussing between the Sturworths, who are on the west side of the property, and the Williams on the right side of the property. The comprehensive plan lists this as suburban residential. So the rezone from ER, estate residential, to SR, suburban residential, matches exactly for either zone. So the comprehensive plan is kind of a moot point here. Included in the packet is the letter from The applicant, which is Ronald Williams, he is the one who's truly requesting the rezone here to bring his property into compliance. Should the rezone be approved with the condition, they would then be filing a final plat amendment to shift the lot line officially and vacate the easement. So he tried to do this once before, didn't want to go through the rezone process. Now he's back trying to do it all over again because the landowner that has the easement does not, I don't know, would rather have it be a fee simple parcel. This is from the as-built survey, which will also be included as a final plat amendment. So this is somewhat the proposed final plat amendment. We're still showing that 50-foot easement for the septic system, but they are showing a blue line of where they would like for the future property line to be between them. So this kind of clearly delineates the portion of property that will be rezoned from ER to SR. And I also highlighted in yellow the setbacks for the pole barn that was built over the property line and in the easement, and also the lean-to portion that has been built without permits. It is 6 feet off of that southern property line and 10.4 feet off of the western property line. Should the rezone to SR be approved, then we would not have a split zone situation. We would have design standards that would actually be met just barely, and compliance once the permits are completed. Included in the packet are the use tables for both the ER and the SR district. And then it's the design standards table here that's really the critical part of this whole rezone. The ER zone requires a 15-foot side yard setback and the SR is a 5-foot setback. So that's really what would bring the pole barn into compliance. The rear yard setback is 35 for an ER zone and 10 feet for the SR zone. If it wasn't for those setbacks, I don't think we would necessarily need a rezone to meet compliance, and perhaps to do the lot line shift, we might still require that actually for lot size purposes. So yeah, it's an interesting situation. We're trying to remedy it here. This is the original plat where the easement came to be, and this is from 2014. The upper photo is of the site plan that was submitted for the original pole barn, demonstrating 10-foot setbacks, 15-foot setbacks, but the dimensions of the lots none of this really matched up with how he built the pole barn in the end. It was like he didn't think he had that easement as his own fee simple property. I also included a timeline of events in case anyone was confused. I won't go through that at the moment, but if we need clarification, I can reference that. The health department, at the request of planning, did go out and confirm that the septic system was actually all contained within that rezoned area so that we weren't going to have another issue later on down the road. And it does have a valid permit from 2014 when it was inspected. So it's been looked at twice now. And then no stormwater comments, no highway department comments. Plan review committee reviewed this and had a negative recommendation to the plan commission for this rezone request. They found problems that there were just compliance issues, and this would be rewarding bad behavior by not following a permit site plan and building a lean-to without a permit from the Williams standpoint. But then you also have to think of it from the new owners of that property who don't want that portion of land anymore. They're walled off from it with a fence and there's a septic system on it. And so that is their desire to also see this rezone go through. The PRC meeting, they also had a hefty discussion about setbacks as well. So with the rezone REZ-21-10, recommendation staff recommends approval of rezone from ER to SR based on the findings of facts and subjects to the Monroe County Highway and MS4 coordinator reports, with the following condition that they apply for a final plat amendment as proposed under Exhibit 2.
Yes, Mr. Garatos.
two questions. One, on the actual privacy fence, and this doesn't matter, I'm just curious. It's going to be west of the proposed lot line, correct?
I had this discussion with Eric Deckard because I was wondering that myself. I think during the final plat amendment, that shaded area is going to be completely vacated.
Okay, that was my second
And then the
question.
blue lot line is going to follow the fence line.
So the plat vacation, or pardon me, the plat amendment, plat vacation will vacate the prior easement
Yes,
as a part of that document.
yes.
Okay, and then on the photo of the backyard,
This one here.
yeah, that one there, in the landscape area on the lower left, that's the vent for the Presby
Yeah.
system. Okay,
That's one of them. And then the other one, I think, is the really tall one. That's
Mhm.
white in the background.
thanks.
Yes, Commissioner Thomas.
So who would own the fence?
Who would own the fence?
Yes, whose property was the fence on if this all happens?
That's a,
I
that's a
think
better
it's a-
question for the petitioner, I would say. And also that line is very thick, I think. Like it's
It
hard,
is.
to say, like 1 inch equals a certain, maybe Bernie could help me explain that a bit more, but yeah, I'm not sure who would be owning the fence at that
I
point.
think that will be a very important determination, don't you? Because it's about maintenance.
Yeah,
So I think that will be very important to clarify and specify somewhere in the motion. This petition has given me a lot of heartburn because I see both sides and I do not want to reward this multiple bad behavioral activities. I really don't. But I also think that the new owners would like to be done with this, and I don't blame them one bit. They didn't ask for this, and so I am torn, and I look forward to hearing from folks.
Yes, Mr. Enright Randall.
Yes, we probably get similar calls like this every week, not some weeks daily in the surveyor's office. And there are very, very few ways to resolve this issue. So I don't want to state, if someone's acting in good or bad faith, but, to prevent them from resolving and cleaning this up is not in our interest, because like I said, there are very few ways of doing this. I think Tammy alluded to that. There was another course that they could have took, but it just was too much. Did I have that right?
no, I think there had been discussion at one point about, just admitting that this pole barn is not in compliance, and if the rezone is denied, then that would need to be, the pole barn would need to be torn down.
Okay.
And it would be difficult to allow for a lot line shift by staff. Not necessarily the design standards, but I think the minimum lot requirements, as we've always kind of interpreted, if we allow for a split zone lot, we like to see that there's a equal amount of land per zone. So right now we're looking at a 1.1 acre lot. If they were to, do a lot line shift without rezoning, we would require another 1 acre for ER zoning to be accommodated. And then they would still have these weird split setbacks wherever they built. It'd be messy.
And that's what I was trying to get at, is it's complicated to resolve these issues in this county. And I'm inclined to, want to support, the lot line shift. And if we have to do these other processes to do that, I'm inclined to support those. But yeah, I agree with Commissioner Thomas that it's hard to really identify if this was intentional, if they're acting in good faith or bad faith. But I do think that we need to allow new buyers a course to move forward to correct these issues.
Commissioner Thomas, did you have a question or no? I have one question, and I'm just looking at the blue line right in front of me. overlaid over the 50-foot pool and septic easement. You know, it's going down, there's a strip. You know, over the rebar to the south, if this is oriented north-south. And I don't, what happens to that easement, that 50-foot pool and septic easement over the blue line?
It would just be vacated
It would be vacated.
during the
Okay.
final plat amendment.
Okay.
And
Okay.
Jackie was reviewing the plat, that proposed draft plat, and really enlarged it.
Yes.
And it does kind of look like the fence will end up on Williams' property,
on the
as he is the
Williams.
person who put it up. I mean, but again, it is an interpretation of a drawing
Yes.
with very thick lines, as opposed to like what a line in space really could be.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I would like to see if Mr. Stainbrook has a question, and then we'll go to the petitioner. If you don't have a question, Mr. Stainbrook, I would like to see if the petitioner's representative, Mr. Williams, if you're here, would you come to the podium, sign in, state your name? Mr. and Mrs., yes, or the petitioner's representative. Yes.
Hi, I'm Tony Sturworth, so I'm the
Oh,
owner of the
okay.
property, and I think Ron may be on the phone.
Okay.
We are very much in favor of this rezoning,
Okay.
so that we can wrap it up. I just spoke with Ron today, and we're both in agreement of moving forward. The fence was put up by Mr. Williams and Ron, and it would be on his piece of the property. Was the intention when we worked with Deckards to have it surveyed, and I'd really like to avoid another survey. So that's where we're at with it, and I'd really like to finish. We've been trying to make this correct for both of us for a long time, so it would be very beneficial if it was approved and we're both in agreement to move forward in this way.
Thank you, Mr. Worth. Have you signed in?
I know I will.
Okay, thank you. And in the meantime, I'm going to turn to Mr. Williams. Oh, he has his hand raised. Wonderful. And if you could unmute him so he could address the Plan Commission. Thank you, Mr. Williams. Welcome.
Okay. Hello. First, I want to say I didn't do any of this to be mean. The previous owner and I had agreed on all of these things, and he actually paid for half of the fence. But I set it back a few feet off of the line of the easement, and I paid him $12,000 for that piece of property. But now with the new owners, that's neither here nor there, but we would like to just get it redone, and I'm going to purchase it from them to make, everybody's property look good, I guess, or what do you call it, where it's all in sync.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. I'm going to turn back to other members of the public to see if there are members of the public here in the Net Hill room in person who would like to speak in favor or in opposition to this petition. No. And if there's anybody on Zoom or on the telephone, please raise your hand or press *9 in order to be recognized. And I don't see anybody, so I come back to members of the Plan Commission for further discussion and or a motion.
Is it the intent of the Sturworths and Mr. Wilson that the fence be owned and be on Mr. Wilson's property? Wilson, excuse me, Wilson.
Williams.
Mr. Williams, excuse me, Tommy.
That is the Sturworth's intent, yes.
Okay,
Yes.
so maybe what we could do is just on the plat, Mr. Deckard could just dimension from the lot corner to the end of the fence to show that it's on Mr. Williams's property.
Okay, is there any further discussion?
I can do a motion.
Okay, Mr. Garitas.
Okay, in the matter of case number REZ-21-10, 1785 East Railtown Road. This is a rezone request from estate residential to suburban residential. Waiver of final hearing requested. I move that we send this petition to the Monroe County Executive Board of Commissioners with a positive recommendation, with the condition that subject to the Monroe County Highway and MS4 coordinator reports, that's based on the findings of fact, and that the petitioners apply for a final plat amendment as proposed under Exhibit 2. And I also move that we approve the waiver for final hearing.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to send a favorable recommendation of RAZ-21-10, which is 1785 East Railtown Road, request from estate residential to suburban residential with a waiver of final hearing and one condition that the petitioner apply for a final plat amendment as proposed under Exhibit 2. I'll call the roll. Julie Thomas.
I wanted to say something cheeky about a condition about further development on the Williams property, but I won't do that. I will vote yes.
Bernie Garitas,
Yes.
Jim Stainbrook,
Yes.
Jeff McKim,
Yes.
Margaret Clemens.
Yes.
Tron Enright Randolph.
Yes.
Okay, the motion carries 6-0.
Thank you. And thank you, Mrs. Skerworth. Thank you. Thanks for coming in, and thank you, Mr. Williams, for also speaking tonight. Okay, we're moving on to item 4 under new business, and this is SPP-22-1 Orchard Estates Subdivision, Section 2, Lot 19, Preliminary Plat Amendment 1. This is a preliminary hearing. A waiver of the final hearing has been requested concerning one parcel on 2.24 plus or minus acres in Section 14 of Washington Township at 8728 North Cortland Drive. And Ms. Crecelius, if you'd be so kind as to lead us through this.
Yeah. So this request is specifically for lot 19.
I don't think your microphone is on.
Just not close enough. So this request specifically is for lot 19 of the Orchard Estates subdivision. So the lot 19 owners are proposing to add an additional 10 acres to their current 2.37 acre lot. This would be done in conjunction at the same time with an administrative subdivision to plat the property to the south where the 10 acres would be coming from. So if this proposal, this petition is denied, the administrative subdivision would not move forward. If it's approved, they would both have to be recorded at the same time to show the transfer of land. Because this is a preliminary plat amendment, because this is considered a material deviation to the lot, to the subdivision. So adding this acreage does not create any new buildable area. The property is already developed with a single family residence, and the property owners have no intention of changing anything. They simply enjoy the scenery and the wooded buffer at the end of the lane. So this is a pictometry view of the property. Lot 19 is to the north with a really rough sketch of just what the transfer area would look like that would go from the property off of Old State Road 37 to lot 19. This is the current plat that would be amended. So lot 19 is the bottom left. The road does not continue on. It does end in a cul-de-sac, but right-of-way was dedicated for future expansion. And here is the preliminary plat amendment. The bottom right photo is just a zoom in on the actual expansion of lot 19's boundary. And then for your reference, this is the type E that is being reviewed and would be recorded at the same time if this petition is approved to show that change in boundaries. So staff does recommend approval of this proposed preliminary plat amendment. It meets the subdivision control ordinance and is subject to the Monroe County Highway and MS4 coordinator reports.
Members of the Plan Commission have questions for Ms. Casilius?
I do.
Commissioner Thomas?
I just want to verify that 8754 North Old State Road 37 is not part of the original subdivision, correct?
Correct.
Okay, is
That property is currently unplatted.
okay, thank you. That'll work.
Okay. Any other questions from members of the Plan Commission or Mr. Stainbrook on Zoom? If not, if the petitioner or the petitioner's representative is here and would like to address the Plan Commission, please come to the podium or raise your hand on Zoom or press *9. Mr. or Mrs. Renner or their representative. I don't see anybody. So we come back to members of the public. If you're here to discuss this case and speak in favor or in opposition to this petition, please raise your hand or come to the podium here in the Nat Hill room, or on Zoom, raise your virtual hand or press *9 on the telephone. I don't see anyone, so let's come back to members of the Plan Commission for a motion. Mr. McKim.
In the matter of case SPP-22-1, Orchard Estate Subdivision Section 2, Preliminary Plat, Lot 19, Amendment 1, I move we approve the petition based on the finding that the proposed preliminary plat meets the subdivision control ordinance and subject to the Monroe County Highway and MS4 coordinator reports, and waive the final hearing.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the preliminary plat amendment to the Orchard Estate subdivision. This would be including a waiver of final hearing for property located at 8728 North Cortland Drive. I'll go ahead and take the roll. Bernie Garitas,
Yes.
Jim Stainbrook,
Yes.
and Jim, would you mind turning on the video for the vote?
Oh, I'm sorry about that. Yes.
Thank you. Jeff McKim,
Yes.
Margaret Clemens,
Yes.
Tron Enright Randolph,
Yes.
Julie Thomas.
Yes.
Motion carries 6-0.
Okay, thank you. We're moving on to item number 5 under new business, and that's SAD-22-4, Job Type D, Administrative Subdivision Right-of-Way Width Waiver requested, preliminary hearing, and a waiver of the final hearing has been requested for 2 parcels on 28.82 plus or minus acres in section 35 of Richland Township at North Hart Strait Road. And Ms. Behrman, if you would talk us through this, I'd be so grateful.
Sure. So this is an administrative subdivision, which you wouldn't normally hear. This is just done at staff level. However, staff recognized that right-of-way dedication failed to meet the required 90 feet. And in certain stretches of this road, it's an 85-foot width. Under the subdivision control ordinance 856-28B, it is required that right-of-way dedication follow the thoroughfare plan. This administrative subdivision came to be because the North Wellness Way was purchased and created by the county very recently, and it went right through Mr. Jobs' property. So he will be ending up after this administrative subdivision with a 17.97 acre parcel to the north and a 5.25 acre parcel to the south. These are a couple of photos of North Wellness Way. I got to drive that. It's kind of a pleasant, nice road to go down. It does have a side path on it. This is the plat that is being proposed, delineating, the 2 lots. Now that the right of way has gone through there, right now those 2 separate areas share the same parcel number. So after this administrative subdivision, after this waiver is hopefully approved, would be then 2 lots of record. We've kind of consulted the highway department and reviewed some of their plans that they had on file of this area, just to kind of confirm that, yes, we're short 5 feet for that 90-foot requirement, which is why we're here. And that's kind of like where the 2 arrows to the left are shown. Those are where we're short. And I wanted to bring up a point that the petitioner pointed out to me. Though they did supply some findings of fact, there was another one that was thought of that we pieced together, and that when the negotiations for the right-of-way were being discussed, this was under the previous thoroughfare plan. The current thoroughfare plan, which was adopted December 12th, 2018, really it stepped up the right-of-way requirement, which made that 90-foot a requirement, whereas before it would have probably been considerably less. So that could account for why we have that 5-foot difference here. The highway department did provide some comments and that they are supporting this waiver request. They do not need to acquire any more right-of-way here, so they're satisfied with it. And the petitioner, frankly, didn't want to have to do a lot more survey work to accommodate this 5-foot difference. So with that, under petition SAD-22-4, the job type D administrative subdivision right-of-way waiver, the recommendation from staff is to approve the right-of-way with waiver request based on the findings of fact and reports from the highway department, and they are also seeking a waiver of final hearing. Thanks.
Okay, do members of the Plan Commission have questions for staff? Mr. Garatos?
Just to understand it better. So the county went through and wanted to build the roadway through here, and then purchased right away from Mr. Job.
Correct.
Based on the old thoroughfare plan, which was 85 feet.
I'm not positive if it was 85 feet at the time. I think that's just what they figured that they needed to accommodate stormwater concerns and the side path and the creation of it.
And because the roadway or the right of way split the property, they're doing a type D administrative, which is for that purpose. And upon that review, the thoroughfare plan said it had to be 90 and it was 85.
Yes.
Okay.
Correct.
So as a part of the type D, which is the irony, as a part of the type D, it's being done because of a right of way. That's what the D does.
Yes.
So they were compensated for the 85 feet. Are they going to be compensated for the 5? Because that would have been what the initial requirement was, or are we just rolling into the 95 feet? I'm giving the answer here. We're just rolling into the 95 feet because that's what the thoroughfare plan is at the time of the plat.
You're letting the right of way as purchased by the highway department stand as it is, and there will be no more acquired right of way if the waiver is granted.
Okay, thanks.
Commissioner Thomas?
Yes, so did you say that you're going to assign a new parcel number?
The type B administrative subdivision does technically allow for those 2 lots to become separate, or one parcel to become 2 separate lots under that administrative process.
And so they could, because it's farm and forest then, and it's more than 5 acres, they could ostensibly do something with this property. And so I guess my next question then is for Ms. Ridge or Mr. Satterley, who I see are both on. Ms. Ridge might not be. Regarding driveway access and whether that is sufficient right-of-way for driveway access for both lots, if they might become developed separately. I'm kind of crystal ball. I'm looking in the future here.
Is Mr. Satterley available to comment?
What was the question again, please?
It was convoluted. So this one parcel will become 2 parcels, which means there may be some development on both parcels as a result. Is there any issue? I'm assuming the answer is no, but is there any issue with the highway department regarding driveway permits on both sides of this road, given the 85-foot right-of-way?
That wouldn't really have an impact on driveway locations, but we would prefer to have the driveway, as far away from the Hart Strait intersection as we could.
All right, thank you.
Okay, do you have a question, Mr. McKim? Okay, Mr. Stainbrook, do you have a question?
No, thank you.
Okay, is the petitioner, or the petitioner's representative here, and would you like to address the Plan Commission? Oh, I see Mr. Job is on Zoom. His hand is raised, if you could please unmute him so he could talk with us about this petition.
Hi, my name is Monty Job. This was originally planned in 2016 and finally purchased by the county in 2017 with the regulations, I believe, changed in December of 2018. Concerning the driveways, there is one driveway to the south or the bottom of the current picture. There's 2 driveways already in on the north side, and I believe she's highlighting those right now. So the driveways are already there. I don't know what the regulation was then. I just know that it's been a really long time in the making. And to Mr. Enright Randolph's earlier statement, I started on this back in December. We're in April now. And so when he was talking about the timeline for surveyors and getting things done, this is a very simple thing. And I appreciate your assistance with it, but it is taking a lot of time. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Job. Are there members of the public who would like to speak in favor or in opposition to this petition, either here in person or on Zoom or by telephone, *9? We don't see any. So I come back to the members of the Plan Commission. Yes, Commissioner Thomas.
I have a quick question for staff. Why the mention of the RV in this packet? Can you explain that, please?
When staff performed the site visit, we did see an RV on site that was connected to, I might even have a small photo of it here. This is the existing structure that's on the southern parcel. We did have evidence that someone was living out of that, which is not a permitted use, neither under the planning department's code or the building department's code. And so we took swift enforcement action, and petitioner was happy to tell that person to leave, and it became a non-issue. At one time, we had made a condition of approval associated with it, but we were no longer needing it since we were able to close that case.
Right. Thank you so much.
Okay, so any other discussion or emotion?
In the matter of SAD-22-4, Job Type D Administrative Subdivision, I move we approve the right-of-way width waiver based on the findings of fact and reports from the Highway Department and waive the final hearing.
I second that.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve the right-of-way width waiver of SAD-22-4, Job Type D Administrative Subdivision. I'll go ahead and call the roll.
Could I ask a friendly amendment? Did we waive the final hearing?
Yeah,
Oh,
yes.
and waive the final hearing.
That was part of it.
Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, thank
Good
you.
clarification. Bernie Garitas,
Yes.
Jim Stainbrook,
Yes.
Jeff McKibb,
Yes.
Margaret Clemens.
Yes.
John Enright Randolph,
Yes.
Julie Thomas.
Yes.
Okay, motion carries 6-0.
Okay, great. Okay, so as we said earlier, the Rust Road Sliding Scale Subdivision preliminary plat has been continued The Don Grubb case has been withdrawn. And so we're to the last item under new business, and that's SSS 22-3, Judah Branch Overlook Sliding Scale Subdivision Preliminary Plat, Sidewalk Waiver requested. This is the preliminary hearing, and a waiver of final hearing has been requested. And plat committee recommendation concerning one parcel on 16.26 plus or minus acres in section 32 of Clear Creek Township at 9698 South Harrisburg Road. And so this will be presented by planner Tammy Behrman. Thank you, Tammy.
Thanks. Right, so this is at 9698 South Harrisburg Road, which is mostly technically fronting South Old State Road 37. They are proposing a 2-lot sliding scale subdivision. Lot 1 will end up being 5.81 acres with 4.12 acres being buildable. And Lot 2 will be considered the parent parcel. It will be 11.87 acres with 3.4 acres being buildable. Both lots have submitted septic permits and have acceptable working septics if not. Well, the Lot 1 has an acceptable permit existing already. We do have capacity letters for water and electric. We have right-of-way permits for both. And I do know that for Lot 2, there were some required improvements. So we'll make sure that those are all completed if they haven't been already before the final plat is recorded. Right-of-way dedication requires 90 feet. It had previously been dedicated at 110 feet through this stretch of South Old State Road 37. And then there's some environmental conditions of some drainage easements on Lot 1. And then Lot 2 does have more steep slopes, floodplain, and a really unique geologic feature on it. Lot 1 has a existing residence, detached garage, accessory structures, and then Lot 2 is a pole barn that the petitioner desires to convert into a residence. So this is the aerial imagery. We do see the floodplain there in the south. The existing house is to the north and east, and the pole barn is that larger white roofed structure that I think currently has some horses in it. And again, you can see the property line kind of crosses over and is on Old South State Road 37, and most of that has been acquired by the previous right-of-way dedication, and there are some large power lines that run right through there as well. There's a sidewalk waiver requested for this petition, and that's why you're hearing it this evening. Should the waiver be denied, there would need to be on the west side of the road 600 feet of sidewalk, and on the east side 330 feet of sidewalk. Just noting that the nearest sidewalk is to the north. It's about 0.75 miles away, just inside of Harrisburg. And there is mention on the Monroe County's alternative transportation plan. I circled the area in pink at the very bottom. It does show that part of this parcel is of a moderate priority road improvement, that gold type of designation. But it's the very last little bit of that requested area on the vision map. Staff, having done site inspection, noticed that there is a unique geologic feel out there, and felt that maybe adding the sidewalks would change the character of that area. A lot of bedrock that it's exposed, and just seemed like maybe this wasn't the right spot for a sidewalk in the county. That takes a lot for me to kind of not support a sidewalk waiver. So these are some of the site photos. This is in the upper pictures where Harrisburg merges with South Old State Road 37. And then the other one is looking south. You'll notice that there's those power line easements, and start seeing that steep topography on the eastern side of the road, and then starts to develop a little more south here on the western side of the road. This is one that was taken a little farther south where it's not the best, but there are rocky outcrops throughout this little corridor here, when I think from when the road was built way back when. And then we have the existing home there that will be on lot 1. The upper picture is the pole barn that they hope to convert into an actual residence. And that is really the whole reason for the subdivision. And we've got some aerial views. This is the plat that they've titled the Judah Branch Overlook Sliding Scale Subdivision. Stormwater Department was satisfied with all of the drainage easements that are depicted here, including the floodplain in its full capacity. And then the tree preservation area, we ended up putting on the unique geologic feature and on the eastern side of the road of West State Road 37. That should be enough to accommodate all of the required trees for that length of road frontage. The petitioner did submit several findings of fact regarding the sidewalk waiver request. And the Plat Committee heard this on March 24th and made a recommendation to approve both the sidewalk waiver and the preliminary plat. And it was forwarded to you all here at the Plan Commission. The Highway Department had also comments that supported the sidewalk waiver, and I believe they are satisfied. They've checked off on their step for right-of-way dedication at this location as well. And the MS4 coordinator was satisfied and has no further comments on their end. So with that, under petition SSS-22-3, the Judah Branch Overlook Sliding Scale Subdivision, staff recommends approval of the preliminary plat and that it meets the subdivision control ordinance. And staff also recommends approval of the sidewalk waiver based on the findings of fact.
Okay, so we come to members of the Plan Commission, and I see Commissioner Thomas has a question.
Can you, on the plat that you had up, if you can go back to that screen, can you indicate on this plat where Harrisburg Road is and where the alternative transportation indicated a moderate interest?
That's a great question. It is kind of foggy. It's a thick line. Again, we're dealing with.
I'm sorry?
It's when you're looking at that alternative map, it would have likely been associated with the comprehensive plans jurisdiction for Harrisburg. And that ends right about where the two parcels are divided here.
So, well, that doesn't answer my question.
Yeah,
so,
I know.
So let me attack it a different way. Can you take that map that shows that little piece and indicate where that little bubble is on the plat?
Not entirely. I mean, I really blew that map up and it was really difficult for staff to tell if it would have been ending at Harrisburg.
That's what I'm thinking.
Or if it was in here, like it
Yeah.
was tricky.
I'm guessing that that map indicates Harrisburg Road is my guess, based on what I know about that plan. And if that's the case, looking at this, there isn't a large enough piece here on Harrisburg. I would say it's like 2 feet maybe to really make a difference here once something hopefully is built on Harrisburg Road, because I'm hopeful that something can be done with Harrisburg Road to make it amenable to alternative transportation, because it's a perfect road for it, really. But I don't see this as hindering that ability, because it really just encompasses the actual intersection where it Ys into South State Road, Old 37. So I just want to make sure I was reading that correctly.
Well, okay, that was just something that would maybe be utilized to support the waiver. What triggered the actual requirement for the sidewalks in the first place was because this is the northern part of this parcel is in the designated community for Harrisburg. And that map, which I realize I did not include in the packet. That was very clear to me that right about where this part of the parcel where I'm pointing at here, or maybe I should point here, this, it's technically two separate parcels. And it was the upper parcel up here that was in the designated community. The southern part is not. And so the sidewalks technically would have only had to be within this area here and not near the interesting geologic feature. It's,
Sorry, kind of. Are you thinking that perhaps the reason for that node was to connect Old 37 with Harrisburg?
Yes,
So there's a
that's-
loop that would
Yes,
combine them?
that's what I'm thinking.
And
that
I
little
agree.
piece is-
There's maybe the mailbox is going to
Right.
be
Right,
where it is,
right.
and it would be on the south end where the two roads come together is where
Right.
that would be located
Right.
anyway. So
Right. So that's what I'm saying. I don't think it's big enough. I
I
just
would
wanted to
agree.
verify that
Yeah.
I was reading the map correctly.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just not enough.
Mm.
And I do understand the Harrisburg community, and that sidewalks are important. I just don't know if they're possible, because when I drive down there, I don't know how you would do it. I know they've built a bridge on my street to create a sidewalk. Not everybody can do that. So I just don't see how it could even be done if it's farther south. So, yeah.
So, Mr. Stainbrook?
Well, I'm glad Commissioner Thomas has driven down here. We're practically neighbors, and this is a considerable distance south of Harrisburg. I don't know what the original planning and definition was. Of course, I don't know, but this is not a part of the Harrisburg community. Speaking, well, and that is, Bernie, I think you said that's Old 37, and that's Harrisburg Road. Did someone ask that? That is Harrisburg Road, and that's the convergence of the two roads there. And well, I guess that's, oh, and that's almost in Lawrence County, incidentally. Just a little further, one map showed the road that matches the county line. So I'm not sure what all I've said there, except this is almost unusual for me to be so wholeheartedly in favor of the sidewalk waiver. It's, well, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stainbrook. Other members of the Plan Commission have any? Yes, Mr. McKim?
Just also a comment. I pretty much feel the same way. It takes a lot to get me to support a sidewalk waiver, but I think the conditions have been met here. It's also well documented in the packet, the geologic conditions, and also it doesn't support any kind of alternative transportation project that we can actually envision. So I'm good with it.
Thank you, Mr. McKim. Now, is the petitioner or the petitioner's representative here? Thank you for your patience in waiting your turn to speak tonight. But please come to the podium, sign in, state your name, and share your thoughts with us.
Chris Porter, professional surveyor with Wetzel Cooper James. Thank you all for hearing our case, and thank you for agreeing with our assessment that sidewalks don't fit the nature of this property. We've talked a lot about, or heard a lot about historical preservation, and when you drive down Harrisburg Road, you know, those rock outcroppings are historical. They're built in the 30s. So we
Chris,
don't
could
feel-
you raise your mic just a bit? Sorry, it's a little difficult to hear. Thank you.
Okay. So when you drive down Harrisburg Road, those outcroppings, in my opinion, are historical. They're put through there in the 30s. It's part of the limestone, it's part of the culture. So I'm just glad that you all support that and agree. If you have any questions, I'll be here.
Oh, thank you so much. Are there members of the public who are here who would like to speak either in favor or in opposition to this petition? And if so, either come to the podium, raise your hand on Zoom, or press *9 on your telephone to be recognized. And then we can come back to members of the Plan Commission for further discussion and or a motion. I see Mr. Stainbrook's hand is raised.
Oh,
I don't know.
I'm so sorry, Margaret. I didn't take it down.
That's okay, that's okay. Yeah, okay, so anybody ready for a motion?
I'm willing to make a
Thank you,
motion.
Mr. Enright Randall.
In case number SSS-22-3 Judah Branch Overlook Sliding Scale Subdivision, I move for approval based on the findings that the proposed preliminary plat meets the subdivision control ordinance, and that the approval of the sidewalk waiver request based on the findings of fact and subject to the highway and MS4 coordinator,
What about waiver final hearing?
and waiver of the final hearing.
Second.
Okay,
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve the Judah Branch Overlook Sliding Scale 2-lot subdivision with the, based on the findings of fact, as well as the sidewalk waiver and the waiver of the final hearing. Bernie Garitas,
Yes.
Jim Stainbrook,
Yes.
Jeff McKim,
Yes.
Margaret Clements,
yes.
Tron Enright Randolph,
Yes.
Julie Thomas.
Yes.
Motion carries 6-0.
Well, I want to thank Mr. Porter for coming, and I see that there are two members here in our audience, and I don't know if
Mr. and
you.
Mrs. Robertson.
Oh, that's Mr. and Mrs. Robertson. Thank you for coming tonight. Thank you. And thank you for your patience. So I come back now to staff, though. Are there other items that you'd like to share with us?
Oh, I just want to note that we have a public comment at the very end of our agenda. So if anyone out there is wanting to speak for an item not on the agenda, they're able to do so. And then staff does have a report after that.
Okay, so if there is a member of the public who would like to address the Plan Commission, please press *9 on your telephone, raise your virtual hand on Zoom, or to be recognized. And if we don't see that.
I don't see anyone.
Okay, then we can have we'd love to hear your reports. Yes, Commissioner Thomas. Oh, thank you, bye. So, yes, Jackie and Dave, if you have reports,
I just
how are
have one
things-
report.
How are things going?
Yeah, things are going pretty well. The Mid-States Corridor Study, we had a meeting today. There was a group that was hosting the meeting, and they're in the environmental impact stage. And Monroe County is included in the impact, but it is not included for the proposed road corridor, which I have up on the screen. All of the road connectivity is basically to connect parallel to 231 into I-69. So I'll be looking forward to reviewing that report a little bit more. I think that based on the phone call today, they said that the main impact to Monroe County is likely traffic increase because of the I-69 connection. I also want to make sure that the public knows and that the Plan Commission knows that you can make a statement to the environmental impact. The road 231 is very similar in route, though they've chosen not to basically utilize 231, and they want to avoid 3 cities along the way. And so they're actually going to be doing a lot of new road construction in that area. And so we have an opportunity to speak against or for the proposal, and there's an environmental impact statement stage 1 right now. And so I'll send you some information. They do have really quick meetings in quick succession, and I didn't find personally the meeting today to be very helpful. So I'm hoping to read that report quickly, and I'll get the information out to the Plan Commission on how to submit the environmental impact statement summary if you'd like to as a commission.
This did come up very quickly, and so thank you for attending to it and for involving and informing us. It's very helpful. Thank you. So, Mr. Schilling, do you have any reports?
I have no report.
Well, then, what are we going to do? Is there anybody opposed? I don't think so. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for your
Thank you,
good
Mr.
work.
Evans.